Growing up in Lowry was great because we lived on a farm and then we moved to like the outskirts of Glenwood, so I was very free to do what I wanted. Hearing about people traveling and reading stories about people traveling, I wondered why I couldn't, or why that wasn't a part of my narrative, why that wasn't a part of my plan. And I met an exchange student just briefly and I thought, I could do this. I wanted to go to Germany because my family is also German. There's a German history there as well, and we have relatives who speak German. But when I arrived, I realized how big the world is, and like how small Lowry is, and how many opportunities there are outside of Lowry. Mostly what I learned about is who I was within Lowry. Where does Lowry fit on the global map? I had a lot of dental work growing up. I like knocked teeth out, etc. And I would never go completely under, he'd give me local anesthetic or whatever. And during the periods of time getting dental work with my dentist, he talked to me about going to school. And he talked to me about St. Thomas. And I had nowhere to go. I had to sit in the chair and listen to him, and his stories about his daughter going to school there. And it seemed like a really good opportunity for me. There's an extreme difference at St. Thomas between my high school time and my college time because the amount of classes I could take and the amount of attention that was put to my education. I felt, growing up in a small town, sometimes I was shortchanged, perhaps, because I had a lot of interest and I wanted to study a lot. And St. Thomas had that available. When I got the Tommy Award, I remember I said I came here and I wanted to suck the university dry because there was so much going on, there were so many things to do, and I wanted to do them all. I was doing AmeriCorps, and when I started working for Senator Wellstone, that's when everything just sort of blossomed, opened up, because in that office, they believe on the relative intelligence of everyone. So that doesn't sound great, but it's a really good way of organizing an office where you can put your contributions forward, and then the other staff will say, like, okay, that's great, that's where you're at, how can we make a larger decision? So I really blossomed there, and he really opened up like my career to looking at different spaces within human rights. Since leaving St. Thomas, I think I've discovered like how connected we are around the world. That while there are a lot of differences, there are so many more similarities, and it's just about allowing those similarities to show themselves. But also there are such grave inequalities across the world, across towns in the U.S. And in other countries, and the solutions to them may not be as difficult as we think. I wanted to work with Witness probably a year or two before I ever got hired, right? So I was always focusing on working here because it's so rare for a human rights organization to work so closely with the communities affected by human rights abuses and work with them to organize and tell their story in a way that can lead to change for them. It's not just about, here's the camera, here's editing equipment, let's make a film. It's about how can we structure your messages? How can we choose the proper spokespeople in order to get this video in front of the decision makers? Maybe it's the local community council, maybe it's the United Nations, to affect change. You really need to see some of the human rights abuses, and you need to hear from the people. Sitting in a boardroom discussing it is not enough. And so if we can transfer those stories and those scenes into the rooms of the decision makers, then we're doing our job. Unfortunately, decision makers are not able, or sometimes not willing, to visit these communities. So we have to take those images and those stories to the UN, or sometimes it's only to the municipal councils. And that helps frame the conversation that we can have after in a meeting, or when we're talking about policy change. They can see the effects of particular policies or what the government actions have been. In one specific case, the nonprofit that we work with in Cambodia was working with a very small community of HIV-affected families who were facing their second forced eviction. And not many people were concerned about such a small population, and there's delicate issues around the fact that they're affected by HIV/AIDS, and that these are land rights. Land rights can be very complicated. The video that our local partner put together, it's perhaps 4 or 5 minutes long, very short, but then it was used by us and other human rights organizations to convince over 100 other HIV/AIDS groups around the world, Ukraine, Zambia, Brazil, to sign on to a letter to the Prime Minister of Cambodia to stop these forced evictions, right? We also got grant countries to sign on as well, to create, more awareness and try to push to keep this community in their home. Sitting in Minnesota, you may not have all the answers of what a community in Cambodia needs, but I guarantee they do, So it's about kind of transferring that and just saying, I hear your story, I understand, what is my role? Like, how can I help you in particular? Some of, the world problems that we see on TV, on the news, just seem insurmountable to overcome. But when we hear about the individual stories of a particular person or a particular family or a particular community and what they're doing to confront these larger challenges, I think it gives us all hope. And I think it shows the person viewing, hey, I can contribute in some way. I can support this community, these individuals in overcoming these challenges. I talk about human rights work with others. People say, wow, that situation is very sad. Or how could you deal with these sad, difficult situations every day? And the people I work with are so inspiring, and we're doing something about these situations, We're not just seeing them as impossibilities. We're seeing the possibility of trying to change situations short term and in the long term. There are limitations about how much we can do in human rights, and there's an understanding of okay, I am not going to be the one to solve everyone's problems, and it's not appropriate for me to do that. But in what ways can I help change things? It's about recognizing who's actually in the struggle for their human rights and what I can do to assist that. Less so me parachuting in and making everything better, because I can't do that. But I can try to use some of the things that I and others have learned to support that. It's best just to focus on something that you're very passionate about, whether it's one particular issue or one particular country, or if it's the community down the street, or if it's your own community, and really develop that. I think trying to solve the world's problems, maybe a lot to do when you have a few hours a week to contribute. It means a lot to receive this award, mostly because the issues that I work on and the projects that I'm most passionate about are going to get some space as well for people to learn about. That was the number one thing. It's okay, great. So we can highlight the work of Witness and some of the issues I've taken on. When I first heard that I was nominated for this award, I was surprised. I was happily embarrassed. But I did needed some time to think about it. What does this mean? Did they get it right? Thinking that I'm much too young for an award like this, right? That was my first response. But thinking that accepting this award means a lot to could mean a lot to the people I work with and Witness, the organization I work for. Because it's a recognition of our work here as well.